The people who built the most powerful artificial intelligence on Earth are quietly walking out the door, and on their way out, they keep saying the exact same thing. Not "look what we made," not "the future is bright." They're saying, "we are not ready for what's coming." One of them walked away from around $2 million just to be allowed to say it out loud. Another one, the man they literally call the godfather of AI, quit the biggest tech company on the planet, then admitted he regrets his life's work. And the whole safety team at the company behind ChatGPT? Gone. Dissolved. Scattered. Within days of its two leaders quitting in disgust. Now, here's the part that should stop you cold. These aren't outsiders. These aren't nervous journalists or doom-posting strangers on the internet. These are the engineers, the researchers, the co-founders, the people who saw the thing up close, from the inside. And the closer they were to it, the more terrified they came out. So the obvious question is, what did they see? Why are the people who understand this technology best the ones sprinting for the exits? And why is almost nobody outside these buildings taking it seriously? Well, to understand that, we have to start with the man who gave up a fortune. His name is Daniel Kokotajlo. In 2022, he joined OpenAI as a governance researcher. His whole job was thinking about how this technology should be steered. 2 years later, in April 2024, he quit. And on his way out, OpenAI handed him the standard exit paperwork. Sign here, stay quiet, and you keep your equity around $2 million. For most people, that's not a decision. That's the rest of your life. And here's the detail that tells you everything. That $2 million was reportedly about 80% of his entire net worth. He wasn't some billionaire executive. He was a researcher living on salary and stock. Walking away meant cutting his family's financial security in half. He refused to sign, because signing meant he could never publicly criticize the company or warn anyone about what he'd seen. In his own words, he said he'd lost hope that they would act responsibly, especially as they raced toward artificial general intelligence. He decided some things need to be said now before it's too late to say them at all. And that decision sent a shockwave through Silicon Valley, because Kokotajlo isn't a crank. Back in 2021, he wrote a blog post predicting what AI would look like by 2026, and he got it almost eerily right. So, when a man with that track record gives up his life savings to warn you, you might want to listen to what he's actually warning about. What he's warning about is a scenario his team later mapped out in a report called AI 2027. And it doesn't read like science fiction, it reads like an intelligence briefing from the near future. The core idea is something researchers call recursive self-improvement. Right now, humans build AI. But soon AI gets good enough to help build better AI, which builds even better AI, and that loop starts spinning faster and faster, beyond human speed, beyond human control. Kokotajlo has a chilling phrase for what that looks like. Not 100 brilliant engineers working overtime. He calls it an army of geniuses in a data center. Millions of digital minds, smarter than any of us, running in parallel around the clock. And his estimate for when superintelligence AI that beats the best humans at basically everything actually arrives? A 50% chance by 2029. He says internal conversations push that even closer to 2027 or 2028. And how does he think it goes if we stay on the current path? He's put a number on that too, roughly a 70% chance it ends in catastrophe. Now, and this matters, that's his forecast, not a scientific consensus. Plenty of serious researchers think that number is far too high. But sit with the fact that a man who predicted the last 5 years correctly, who gave up everything to speak, looked at the road ahead and saw a 70% chance of disaster. That's reason number one, to pay attention. But Kokotajlo is just one man. What made this a movement, what made it undeniable, is that he wasn't alone. He was part of a pattern. And that pattern leads us to the second reason we should be worried. The people at the very top of the field started ringing the same alarm. Go back to May 2023. Geoffrey Hinton, a name most people have never heard, and everyone should know. He's a British-Canadian scientist whose work on neural networks is the foundation that ChatGPT and every modern AI is built on. He is, without exaggeration, the godfather of AI. And at 75 years old, he walked away from a decade at Google specifically so he could speak freely about the danger. He told CNN simply that he's just a scientist who suddenly realized that these things are getting smarter than us. He said it's conceivable this technology could just take over from us, and that it would mean, in his words, the end of people. This is the man who built the thing, and he consoled himself with a haunting excuse. If he hadn't done it, someone else would have. His specific fear is worth understanding, because it's not vague sci-fi panic. Imagine 1,000 copies of the same AI, all sharing the same digital brain. The moment one of them learns something, all 1,000 know it instantly. Humans can't do that. You spend years learning something, and it dies with you. These systems pool everything, forever, at once, which is why, Hinton points out, a single AI can already know vastly more than any human who has ever lived. Now scale that up. That's what keeps the godfather of AI awake at night. And then came the moment that turned quiet worry into open rebellion, May 2024. Inside OpenAI, there was a special unit called the Super Alignment Team. Its entire mission was to figure out how to control an AI that becomes smarter than us before that AI actually exists. The company had made a very public promise. It would dedicate 20% of all its computing power to that safety work. 20%. That's the resource. That's the seriousness, they claimed. And then, within the space of a couple of days, both of the team's leaders quit. First, Ilya Sutskever, an OpenAI co-founder and its chief scientist. Then, right behind him, Jan Leke. And Leke did not go quietly. He posted publicly, and it was brutal. He said that at OpenAI, safety culture and processes have taken a backseat to shiny products. He said he'd been disagreeing with leadership about the company's core priorities until they hit a breaking point. He said his safety team had been sailing against the wind, struggling just to get the computing power they'd been promised. And then he dropped the line that should be printed on the wall of every AI lab on Earth. Building smarter than human machines is an inherently dangerous endeavor. Within days of those two leaders walking, the Super Alignment Team, the team whose entire job was preventing catastrophe, was reportedly dissolved, broken up, its members scattered to other projects. Leke left and went straight to a rival, Anthropic. The safety talent was voting with its feet. So you've got the field's founding father warning about the end of humanity, you've got the head of safety saying safety lost to shiny products. And that brings us to the third reason this is so alarming, because when these people tried to warn the public, they found they weren't allowed to. In June 2024, a group of 13 current and former employees from OpenAI and Google DeepMind published an open letter. They called it a right to warn, and the phrase at the heart of it is the whole problem in one sentence. Ordinary whistleblower protections, they wrote, don't cover them because those laws focus on illegal activity, and many of the risks they're terrified about aren't illegal yet. They're not even regulated yet. The law simply hasn't caught up. So, an employee who sees something genuinely dangerous has no legal shield if they speak. They just have broad confidentiality agreements telling them to shut up. And it got worse. In July 2024, whistleblowers filed a formal complaint with the SEC, alleging that OpenAI's non-disclosure agreements were so restrictive they illegally stopped employees from warning regulators about the risks. Think about that. The accusation was that a company building potentially world-altering technology had written its paperwork specifically to keep the people who understood it best from telling the government anything. Another former researcher, Leopold Aschenbrenner, warned before he was fired that the company's security against foreign adversaries was, his words, egregiously insufficient. He was worried the most powerful technology in history could be quietly stolen. And when the NDA scandal blew up, even CEO Sam Altman had to respond. He claimed he hadn't known about the clauses that clawed back employees' equity and posted that it was one of the few times I've been genuinely embarrassed running OpenAI. Take that at face value or don't, but the machinery to silence people was real, and it was running. And this is where the story stops being a boardroom drama and becomes something genuinely dark. Because one whistleblower didn't just lose his equity. His name was Suchir Balaji. He was 26 years old. He'd worked at OpenAI for around 4 years, and in October 2024, he went public in the New York Times, arguing the company had violated copyright law by hoovering up the entire internet to train ChatGPT. He'd been named in a court filing as someone who might hold key documents, and in November 2024, he was found dead in his San Francisco apartment. The medical examiner ruled it a suicide. His family disputes that ruling and has requested independent investigation, and to be clear, no public evidence has substantiated claims of foul play. The official ruling stands. But whatever you believe about that night, the raw fact remains. A young man raised concerns about one of the most powerful companies on Earth, and weeks later he was gone. And it sent a message to every other insider watching, whether it was meant to or not. So let's add this up. The godfather of AI is warning about extinction. The head of safety quit saying safety lost. A researcher gave up his life savings to speak. The whistleblowers can't legally warn you, and the one who spoke loudest about copyright ended up dead. And yet, and this is the maddening part, the machines are being built faster than ever. The race hasn't slowed. If anything, it's accelerating. Which brings us to the final, and maybe the most important, question. If everyone on the inside is this scared, where is everybody else? Where are the laws? Where's the plan? The honest answer is barely arriving, and probably too late. For years, there was almost nothing. Then, finally, in September 2025, California's governor signed a law called SB 53, the Transparency in Frontier Artificial Intelligence Act. It took effect on the 1st of January, 2026. It's the first serious law of its kind in America. It forces the biggest AI companies to publish their safety frameworks, report critical incidents, and crucially, it protects whistleblowers, giving them a real channel to speak without being destroyed for it. That's genuine progress. But read the fine print and the scale of the problem jumps out. The law only really kicks in for catastrophic risk, which it defines as something that kills more than 50 people or causes over $1 billion in damage. 50 deaths, $1 billion. That is the floor before the strongest protections fully engage. Everything short of mass casualty or economic disaster sits in a gray zone. At the federal level, Senator Chuck Grassley introduced a bipartisan AI Whistleblower Protection Act back in May 2025, a bill designed to protect these insiders properly, remove that catastrophe threshold, and let them speak. It's a good bill. As of early 2026, it still hadn't passed. It was sitting there, waiting, while the technology it's meant to govern doubled and doubled again. And that's the whole terrifying shape of it. This isn't a story about killer robots or some distant sci-fi apocalypse. It's a story about timing. On one side, you've got a technology improving on an exponential curve, built by companies with billions of reasons to move fast and stay quiet. On the other, you've got human institutions, laws, regulators, the public moving at the pace they've always moved, which is to say, slowly, reactively, one scandal at a time. The people who built this thing are telling us the gap between those two speeds is where the danger lives. That's what "we are not prepared" actually means. Not that something is guaranteed to go wrong, but that if it does, we will be finding out in real time, with no seatbelt on. Jeffrey Hinton said the difference between 5 years ago and now is already staggering, and then told us to take that difference and propel it forward. That, he said, is what's scary. Daniel Kokotajlo gave up everything he had to hand us a map of a future he thinks we're sleepwalking into, and the safety teams whose entire job was to catch us if we fell, a lot of them have already quit, or been shown the door, or scattered to the wind. They looked at what's coming, they got as close to it as anyone on Earth, and they walked out saying the same 3 words: we are not prepared. The only real question left is whether the rest of us start listening while there's still time to do something about it, or whether we wait, like we always do, until the story writes its own ending. So here's my question for you. Do you think these insiders are right to be terrified, or is this just hype from people who got cold feet? Tell me in the comments, because I read them all. And if you want the full breakdown of what the people building this technology are actually saying behind closed doors, subscribe and hit the bell, because this story is only getting started and you're going to want to see what comes next.